Did you guys know that I've got a podcast on where is it on? Spotify, I think. And all summer long, we're going to be doing the Ripple Effect. That's the name of the Spotify podcast. And it's going to be amazing because we're going to be talking about transfers. And there's loads of transfers and the ripple effects of those transfers. And if the player goes there, then what? Well, listen to the podcast and you'll find out. Links in the description. Support your boy during the summer, okay? Because you might not see him anywhere else. I mean, you might do, but you might not. So go follow the podcast. Right. With Champions League football in the bag next season, it's time for Newcastle to stop being the darlings of the league, and it's time for them to enter their villain arc. We've spoken about it several times, and now's the time. This is exactly how Newcastle are going to become the bad boys of the Premier League over the next 3 transfer windows. So by 2025, this is how Newcastle United could look. I'm not going to show you it now, am I? I'll show you at the end of the video. So Newcastle are now in the best possible position to spend the maximum amount of money allowed, obviously, and to make sure that they have quality, but crucially also depth to continue their momentum next season, because they were the surprise package this year. Next year, people are going to see them coming, okay? So let's begin with the contract situation. This is what we do, and we've actually done this, guys, on Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea. We're going to do it on Tottenham, Arsenal and Everton still. And we're going to put forward 3 transfer windows for all of those guys so you can enjoy those on the channel. So a great reason to subscribe. But with these videos, we generally put forward the contract situation so you can understand what you're working with. Now, Newcastle are in a good spot when it comes to the contracts. With most of their important players who've helped them to get to the top 4, they've either sort of been signed recently and therefore have a lot of time on their contracts, or they have signed contract extensions over the last 12 months. Therefore, the people with contracts expiring in 2023 aren't of that much importance to them, whilst also allowing them to trim the squad, which will facilitate a general uplift in quality, which is what's necessary at Newcastle. So, in terms of contracts expiring in 2023, you've got Loris Karius, Matt Ritchie, Mark Gillespie, Paul Dummett, and Matty Longstaff. So, as you can see here, none of these players with contracts expiring this summer are of that, of high importance to Newcastle right now. And with the direction that they're headed, they won't be important anytime soon, even with Eddie Howe being able to turn average players into world beaters, it seems. As for 2024, it's a bit different, with some more important players with their contracts set to expire. So here are the players that have contracts that are expiring in 2024. Callum Wilson, Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, Javi Manquillo, Jamal Lascelles, and Emil Kraft. So the summer of 2024 could be even more exciting, with the possibility of quite a few first-team players needing to be released. So let's make our way through some of these transfer windows. First of all, of course, summer 2023. That's right now. This is a pivotal window for Newcastle, and possibly the most important one yet under the new ownership, because now it's a necessity to add quality to not only be competitive in Europe, but to deal with the demands of playing European football whilst trying to uphold the same form as this season in the Premier League, in what is a very congested top end of the Premier League. I think Newcastle, they may need as much as 4 big signings, but they need to be smart with how they do so to keep in regulation with financial fair play. So as reported by The Athletic, the 40 million outlay on Anthony Gordon and the 60 million spent on Alexander Isak was beyond Newcastle's intended spending in the last 2 windows. However, due to Newcastle being run very tightly under Mike Ashley, so weirdly a blessing in disguise, it now gives them some sort of decent wiggle room to go for it in the summer transfer window. So with that in mind, here's who Newcastle could sign this summer. On the topic of market movements and investing in assets, I wanted to chat to you guys very quickly about my partner Lightyear, who have sponsored today's video. Whilst I'm speaking about transfers and the football market right now, you should also make sure that you take care of your personal investments with Lightyear, the go-to investment app. Lightyear offer crazy convenient, simple and low-cost access to stock markets around the world. The platform has over 3,000 stocks and ETFs, as well as lots of data and information about instruments and market movements, helping you make informed investment decisions. And there's more. On Lightyear, you can also earn interest on your uninvested money in 3 currencies, euro, dollar, and pound. And the team have just launched their web application, which means you can now invest and do your research on the big screen. Use my code JAMES to get started with Lightyear and receive a $10 fractional share after making your first investment. Both Lightyear and I want to emphasize that when investing, your capital is at risk, as the value of your investments may go up as well as down. Check the link in the description and check out Lightyear. Centre midfielder. So a quality box-to-box midfielder will go a long way in improving the first choice 11 of Newcastle. Look, you've got Joe Willock, you've got Joe Linton and Sean Longstaff. They've done excellent jobs this season, as well as the emergence of Elliot Anderson in the sort of latter stages of the season in terms of game time. But it feels like Newcastle, they only need one big signing in this position to complement Bruno Guimaraes, who sits at the base of the midfield. Due to Bruno being the only quality 6 at the club, I think I factored this into who to target. Option 1, Maxence Caqueret, 23 years old, market value 22 million according to Transfer Market. Estimated cost 30 million. He currently plays for Lyon and is an exceptionally gifted deep-lying playmaker who can also play as an 8. He's played as a 6, he's played as an 8 and a 10 as well, actually, for Lyon this season, and he suits a 3-man midfield as an 8 who can string passes together, whilst Joe Linton or Willock play slightly higher. He's got 4 goals and 7 assists in that last season that's just finished, and he is extremely technical. He also has excellent defensive output, 3.4 tackles and interceptions per 90, which again fits perfectly into the system that Eddie Howe has developed. With him being able to play at the base or as an 8, it makes it easier to rotate the team whilst also taking that pressure from Guimaraes off in terms of being fit every single game, because the drop-off has felt quite severe in terms of that element of quality. Second option, Mano Kone, 22 years old, market value 26 million, estimated cost 35 million. Now, Kone would be a good alternative option for Newcastle. He's a great centre midfielder who shines at progressing the ball via carries, whilst also useful with his distribution. He's averaging almost 2 successful take-ons a game, and at 6'1", he reminds me a lot of Moussa Dembele. Is he going to be as good as him? Time will tell. It's a dangerous thing for me to say. But having a player like this in midfield could add another sort of skill set and dimension to Newcastle, and just that little bit more silk, if you know what I mean. With him being able to progress the ball via carries, it makes them more press resistant as well, whilst also adding more counter-attacking potency, which I think is a lovely mix for this Newcastle side going into this new season. Next up, the left-back position. I think left-back is a position that may need strengthening. The owners they've bought 2 left-backs actually already in Dan Burn and Matty Targett, but Targett could leave for game time, I think, in the summer, which would leave them with Dan Burn and Jamal Lewis. Therefore, I think they need a left-back that can be a long-term option for them, as well as adding maybe depth and a bit of versatility to Dan Burn. Option 1, Mitchell Bakker, 22 years old. Market value is 7.8 million. Estimated cost about 15 million. He has been great for Leverkusen under Alonso, but has mainly been playing as a wing-back in their system. However, I think the wing-back system Leverkusen use isn't dissimilar to Newcastle's sort of asymmetric approach. Second option, Kieran Tierney, has been heavily linked, 25 years old. Market value, 22 million. Estimated cost 30 million. I mean, good one for the comments. Arsenal fans, if you're watching this one, Kieran Tierney, how much would you want for him? I mean, Arsenal spent 25 million on him. Tierney feels like he would be a sensible transfer for Newcastle. I mean, if he can stay fit, that is always the caveat. And I hate saying that about players, but it's true. But I think we've said that about other players in the past. So you can kind of return to that healthy glory. That makes sense. But with Zinchenko, the nailed-on left-back at Arsenal, with everyone fit, I think a player like Tierney feels wasted on the bench every week. He's made 27 appearances in the Premier League this season, but only 6 of them have been starts. So moving to Newcastle, I think, would work well for both parties. Next up, higher up the pitch, the winger position, I think, is an area that needs addressing. I think Almiron has been excellent this season, but with Joe Linton having to fill in that left wing at times, I think it does show that Newcastle could do with some extra reinforcements in the wide areas. And I think the big thing with Newcastle as well is overachieving is exactly that. And so if you're going to revert to the mean, then that is going to mean that you're going to almost go backwards with Newcastle, because they have exceeded their expectations so much. So I think they need those reinforcements in wide areas, especially with the form of Alan St-Maximin and Gordon up in the air, really. So here are the options that we've got. One of which is a right winger, whilst the other can play a bit of both. Option 1, Domenico Berardi, 28. Market value 16 million, estimated cost 22 million. Obviously, you get him from Sassuolo, and I feel like Berardi is a player that doesn't get the credit he deserves outside of Italy. Over the last 4 seasons, he's totaled 96 goal involvements in Serie A, and is genuinely just a fantastic goal scorer, but also a chance-creating winger as well. He's predominantly a right winger, but would add serious firepower to this Newcastle side. 7 of his 12 goals this season have been penalties, to be fair, but that doesn't take away from the overall quality that this guy has as an attacker. He's one of those players that you just feel would do well in England, in the Premier League. Second option, David Neres. 26 years old, market value 20 million according to Transfer Market, estimated cost 35 million. Neres only signed for Benfica last year, but I think it's always the case with Benfica. With the right money, Benfica would probably sell him. Chelsea proved this with Enzo Fernandez, obviously for a much higher amount. An offer of 35 million, as well as the temptation of Premier League football, may be enough to sway Benfica and Neres himself. I feel like Neres, I think he gets wrongfully pigeonholed into the category of, he doesn't have that end product because of his skills and technical ability. But this season, he has been directly involved in 14 goals in Liga Portuguesa. Why can't I say that properly? Why can't I just say Liga Portuguesa? Sorry. 6 goals, 8 assists. He's also created 10 big chances as well. He's got the ability to play on the left or the right wing, which I think is going to be beneficial for Newcastle when you're thinking about keeping squad depth at the forefront of our thinking here. And then the right back position. Yes, the right back position. I think it's very important for Newcastle because of how they use Trippier as, almost a primary creator. But after Trippier, there isn't anyone who matches his profile, meaning an injury to Trippier is potentially outrageously damaging to their style of play and output, obviously, as well. Newcastle signed Harrison Ashby, who's 21, in January from West Ham, and whilst he may be the answer in the long run, I don't think he's going to be quite ready for next season. So, a couple of options as backup for Trippier. Benjamin Henrichs, 26 years old, market value is 13 million, estimated cost 20 million. Maybe a little bit punchy when you've got him not as the starter, but it's almost impossible to find a right back with the level of technical ability that Trippier has without looking at Trent. But Henrichs would be, I think, a good option in my opinion. Currently at Leipzig, he's had an excellent season with his defensive stats doing the bulk of the talking, but he's also decent at open play chance creation with 41 shot creating actions from open play in the Bundesliga this season. Whilst not a perfect fit, I think he's someone that would improve the overall squad at Newcastle, which again is something they need to focus on. And he can also play in central midfield if needed. Second option, Tino Livramento, 20 years old. We forgot about him, didn't we? 22 million market value. Estimated cost, maybe only 15 million because look, we've gone bold here, but I think there's good reasoning for it. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten how good this guy was before his injury. He's only played 30 minutes of Premier League football this season, which was in that one of the last few games against Brighton. But I can't get away from how good he was last season, and also in the Chelsea Academy, and having that tutelage up through the Chelsea Academy is great. He was one of the best right backs in the league in that first season at Southampton, and he averaged 3.22 progressive carries per 90 and was immense at carrying the ball from right back. He even displaced Kyle Walker-Peters in the side, who's an international right back, left back, whatever. And he's still 20. So I think he could easily get back on track and is very much worth what could feel like a gamble to some. Let's move forth to January 2024, the January transfer window. Now, the owners have been somewhat unpredictable in Januaries since they took over at Newcastle. They spent 90 million in their first January in charge, which was needed because they were obviously struggling against relegation. But that was mainly to obviously ensure that survival and give the team the much needed cash injection that was missing from the previous ownership. This recent January, they bought Anthony Gordon for 40 million, as well as some sort of minor signings as Harrison Ashby, who we just spoke about, for 2.95, and Garang Keol, the Aussie, for 300k. So I feel like moving forward, Newcastle are likely to stick to the summer window as their main opportunity to bolster their squad, and then they're going to make additions where needed in January, dependent on situations such as injuries or overall needs of the squad. I also don't think that they'll go big in January due to the tax placed on players to move on January. I think you would hope that they've shown a sort of a calmness and a patience, whilst obviously having serious bank, to not have to kind of make those moves in January that feel a little bit desperate. Having said that, I think this is, one position that they may look to add to in January, and it's the striker position, because Callum Wilson's contract is due to come to an end in 2024, and I think with him and Isaac being the only nines in the team, Newcastle may look to add an extra for cover, but also as a future replacement for Wilson if he does leave. By this time, I think Isak will be the main striker, with cover being the main purpose of this signing. So option one for this one, for January 2024, Donyell Marlon, 24, market value 13 million on transfer market, estimated cost 30 million. Marlon has had a really up and down season this last season, but I think he's finishing it extremely well, picking up the Bundesliga Player of the Month for April. But he could get tempted by Newcastle, as everyone obviously could be. And by January, he will have been at Dortmund for 2.5 years and could well enough fancy a move by then. And what I like about Marlon is his ability to play on the left, right, or as a striker. This could work really well in terms of playing with Isak or as the lone striker. Marlon will be turning 25 in January 2024 and will likely be hitting his prime by that time. Will they go for it? Again, I'm not totally sure when it comes to January, but they may be well tempted. I could see that rumour knocking about. Option 2 is very different. Taiwo Awoniyi, 25 years old, market value 17.5 million at the moment, obviously. This will be in the future. Estimated cost 30 million. Now, this is a very hypothetical transfer because it depends on a few things. Firstly, it depends on whether Awoniyi continues to perform well in the Premier League. That will also affect the cost. Another aspect of this is how important he is to Forest at that time. And if they'd let him go or not, are they going to be a selling club by that point? Maybe not. So this is a tricky one. It is very hypothetical. But say they do, I think he'd be fantastic for Newcastle. He's shown how much of a handful he can be in the box if balls get thrown into him. So if you imagine this at Newcastle, a team that is built around putting as many balls into the box as possible, I like the idea of this, and I think he'd thrive in the situation. Summer 2024 then, we move up. It's going to be lovely. Sun's going to be shining. It's going to be great times. And it'll be interesting to see where Newcastle are at this stage and how they get on next year with Champions League football and everything in between. But the biggest thing that Newcastle will need to address in the summer of 2024 is the centre-backs, in my opinion. Dan Burn, Jamal Lascelles and Fabian Schär's contracts are all set to expire in 2024. So they'll all also be over 30 by this time, meaning that Newcastle will need to find at least 2 new centre-backs for the squad. So we're going to go and put forward 4. That's right, 4, you lucky devils. Forward. 2 right-sided options and 2 left-sided as the main targets for summer 2024. I know Botman is a great left-footed centre-back, but there's nothing wrong with cover, is there? Okay? Panic early, as I say. So left-sided centre-backs, let's start there. Option 1, Giorgio Scalvani. 19 years old, market value 26 million, estimated cost, it could be punchy this one, 50 million. Scalvani is a really special talent, and I think the reason I say this is because of how he's reinventing the role of an Italian centre-back. Italian centre-backs are mostly known for their solid defending and not much more, but Scalvani could be a incredibly defining player for this generation of Italy through his flexible interpretation of the role. I think his playing out from the back, as well as his understanding of when to engage and when to drop off, it makes him really special as a player. I think it's worth mentioning that despite being a left-sided centre-back, he's actually a right-footed player. However, he's great with both feet, which is why he plays on the left for Atalanta. Option 2, Piero Hincapié, 21. Market value transfer market is 22 million. Estimated cost 30 million. I think Hincapié is a similar, but not exactly the same option as Scalvani. Hincapié's ceiling, it may not be as high, but I still think he'll be Premier League bound soon enough. He's naturally a centre-back, but can also play as a left-back in an inverted system, so could also be a direct replacement for Dan Burn if you wanted him to by that point. He's only 5'11", but I think his athleticism makes up for it massively. I also like how tenacious he is in the tackle. He's in the top 10% for successful tackles in Europe and is excellent at defending in wide areas, which is great when covering fullbacks. Over to the right side. And option 1 for right-sided centre-backs, Anel Ahmedhodzic. Now, you guys know, we've been talking about this guy for some time. We did a video with Scouted Football. They put him forward as one of the names to watch out. He's 24, currently at Sheffield United, made the move there last year, did fantastically for them. Tell him, Sheffield United fans, tell him in the comments down below how brilliant he was for you. Correct? Yes, he was. Market value 14 million, estimated cost 25 million. Again, I think this one is hypothetical, and a lot of them obviously are going to be by this stage, because I think it depends how he takes to the Premier League next season. He's also been playing as part of a back three for Sheffield United, which does alter the stats somewhat for him. But I think he's an excellent player. And in terms of his sort of ball progression as well as his overall skill set, I think he's going to be an excellent like-for-like replacement for someone like Fabian Schär. Option 2, Malik Thiaw, 21 years old, market value 30 million on transfer market, which seems odd. Estimated cost 40 million, maybe a little bit more than that. Thiaw could be the perfect signing for Newcastle. He's going to be 22 by next summer, but is wise beyond his years in a footballing sense. He's a really exciting talent. I think he's got excellent athleticism, but he's also kind of a no-nonsense type of defender, but he puts the best defensive decisions at the forefront of his thinking. In a team like Newcastle, where quality of defence is so important, I think Thiaw could be absolutely perfect as a partner for Botman, but he would obviously come at a premium. But Newcastle have showed that they don't mind paying premiums for players who have that longevity, as so they should. And Thiaw fits this category massively. So, after 3 transfer windows, this is what the potential Newcastle lineup could be in 2025. It looks pretty exciting there. And Newcastle fans, you will notice that, of course, Joe Linton is still in that starting lineup. You are my guy, son. Don't you go anywhere, boy. You're going to the top, right to the top. As are quite possibly Newcastle. Exciting times. Let me know what you think. What players have we missed out? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you go check out all the others that we've done in this series. Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool, a few more to come as well. So make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and yeah, tuck into this. See this floating about? That's the Chelsea starting 11 in 2025. In this video, we're going to go through the next 3 transfer windows, put forward the outgoings and ingoings to rebuild and fix this Chelsea side to create this team. Of course, I will reveal this team at the end of the video.